Hello, everyone. On our last podcast 15, we discussed John Wayne Gacy's formative years. We found that his relationship with his father was tenuous at best, as his father, John Stanley Gacy, would beat and ridicule young Gacy on a daily basis. He was never able to live up to the expectations of his father, but he did try to live up to those expectations he was never going to live up to. Young Gacy had a better relationship with his mother. He liked to do things like cook and bake, which it's interesting. He liked to do these things with his mother, which caused a better relationship, but his father did not particularly care for him doing those things. Further, we also learned that young Gacy had a history of medical challenges to overcome, one of which was motor epilepsy, which his father denied him having. He believed he was just faking it. Now, strangely, we saw a young Gacy who cared deeply for animals. He was very compassionate towards animals. And that's a trait that we don't normally associate with serial killers. His sister said that when he was young, he was a bit of what we would call people pleaser. He liked to make sure he did what the adults said, whether he was in a classroom, at school, or at home. He didn't like getting in trouble. It seemed like nobody could have predicted the monster that this young Gacy would become. Today, we are entering the adult years. There seems to be two different Gacys we're going to see. We're going to see the public Gacy, that is a hardworking businessman that gives back to the community and does everything right. And then we're going to see the private Gacy, which is nothing less than evil. A Gacy that targets young boys and young men to gratify his own perverse pleasures. Part 2 will begin with Gacy at the age of 18, and we are about to roll it, but first we need to roll the introduction with the trigger warnings because there are many. See you soon. Welcome to Rooted in Time Genealogy with your host, Nicole
and Melody.
We are two sisters creating a podcast that uses genealogy, history, and psychology intermixed with a smattering of generational trauma to bring to life a 4D view of our ancestors.
Links to source material are available at rootedintime.net. You will find primary source documents, relevant newspaper articles, and images, if available. A list of our services can be found there as well. Also, be sure to check out the blogs that you can find on the website that may have more detailed information if any of these topics interest you.
The first time John Wayne Gacy left was at the age of 18. I'm pretty sure it's at least partially because he wanted to get away from his father.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine.
I'd want to get away from him too.
Yeah, for sure.
At this time, he decided to work at a mortuary in Las Vegas, and he would sleep on the couch in the mortuary. He was only there a few months, though. That's when he came back home. That's also when he decided to go to the business college. When he graduated business college, he worked as a manager at a shoe company.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty good. You get out and you're already
management
level. That doesn't always happen. While he's working there, he meets a coworker by the name of Marilyn Myers, and he ultimately marries her in 1964. At this time, he's 20 years old.
Okay.
So he marries,
It's young.
Young, and at this time, that's normal when they marry.
Yeah. I can't really say too much. I got married at 21, but
I think I was 26, 25. I don't even know. I was some age. It was a long time ago.
It was a while ago.
Marilyn's father actually owned several restaurants. Like, he owned a lot of KFC chains.
Okay.
He gave Gacy 3 of them to manage in Waterloo, Iowa. So
Wow.
Marilyn and Gacy moved up to Iowa. They had 2 kids. During this period, there are tons of articles highlighting his accolades and how good of a person he is for the community.
Wow.
He was a JC, which was like this group for young people to network together and give back to the community. But it was like young business leaders and stuff would join this group. And he was considered the man of the year one of the years.
That's crazy.
So he was very well liked. Like,
yeah.
He must have had some charisma because he was very well liked as both a businessman and a citizen.
Yeah,
of the
you
area.
wouldn't think, knowing his background as like a boy and what he was raised as he was,
Yeah.
it would come to these kind of accolades. Like, interesting. Even taking away, what he does later, that's surprising to me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of articles that he shows up in as being recognized. He even gets a picture at one point later on with Carter's wife, President Carter's wife.
Hmm. Wow.
He was known in the community as a hard worker.
Mhm.
His neighbor of 7 years, and this is going to be the neighbor from the home when all this stuff is going to take place, so not in Iowa, but the one back in Chicago. The way she described Gacy was Gacy had come to the neighborhood, showed up at her house with a bunch of fruit, and was like, I'd like to introduce myself. And they ended up becoming friends and just, talking to each other and all that kind of stuff. And that nothing was weird about him. Like he was
Yeah.
normal. And then she remembered this one little period of time where she was like, that was weird.
Yeah.
She recalled a time when Gacy came up to her and had a list in his hand. And he said he wanted to read it to her. Of his
Okay.
accomplishments, might I add. It
That's
was a
weird.
list of his accomplishments. And he would not give her the piece of paper. She did ask for it rather than listening to him read it forever. But some of the things that she remembered off the top of his head, that he said that he had been a chef, a fast food chain manager, an ambulance driver, a soldier, a politician, a policeman, and a bartender, amongst other things.
Huh?
Yeah, he did
Okay.
not do all those things. He did do
No.
some of those things for short stints.
Yeah.
But anytime he talked to somebody and hobnobbed, I think he thought he was a politician. I don't know when he was a policeman. He was an ambulance driver for a short stint. Bartender, I don't know, that might be whenever he was drugging his people or something, but it was just it's so weird. Like, why
Yeah.
would you
Well,
even do that?
so this is kind of what I see with that. It's like he was never accepted or good enough
So
for
he had to
his
make himself look
yeah.
better.
So it was like his way of being like, "Hey, before you dismiss me as a person like everybody else in my life has, these are all the amazing things about me. You should like me." Like I think that was kind of his way of doing that. But now I know if anybody comes up to me though wanting to say anything like that, it's a red flag for me and I'm going to need you to get off my property away from me as
Yeah,
fast as
I
possible
no.
cuz
You're
that's
not
weird.
I'm
Yeah.
not talking to you.
Obviously, social cues probably were not his, which is weird to say that social cues wouldn't have been a good thing whenever he's had all these accolades, you know?
The Chamber of Commerce considered him man of the year also, and I believe it was 65.
Yeah, so you would think that you have some kind of know-how or understanding that that's not a normal thing. You don't do that. And I mean, if he did
Yeah.
that with her, I imagine he did it with other people.
Yeah, and I don't know any situation in which I would read off a list of my accolades to anybody
I absolutely am going to print out all of my accolades, which is very few, by the way, and
and then say you can't look at it.
go to my neighbor's house, knock on them, be like, "I wanna introduce myself. My name is Melody. I graduated from high school in '05. I graduate." Like,
Yeah.
that's so freaking weird.
I it
Like, I don't
When I read that, I was like, "Are you
uh,
what?" Like, the more you read about him, the more weird he is.
do you think do you think he was on the spectrum?
I don't know. I think he understood social cues just because of where he got himself with the JCs,
Uh-huh.
so I would say it would be unlikely.
Okay, because I thought maybe just a minor, like, not obviously,
Oh, yeah, no, I see what
you
you're
know?
saying, like, with the social
Mhm.
situation, like, I
Yeah.
think he thought because they were his friends, the neighbors, that he could go over and be like, "Look what I've done."
Yeah,
But no
but
one
your
cares.
neighbors are not your friends, like, they're your
Well, they were
neighbors.
friends. They were
So
friends.
they were already friends whenever he
Yes.
went over there and oh, that's
Yes.
weird. That's still weird. I don't I was picturing him, like, as an introduction, like,
No,
going
the
up to her, being
introduction
like,
was he brought over
"My
fruit.
name is
What?
Wayne Gacy. These are my accolades." Like
Yeah. No.
Let's not do
He
that. Let's
and this
take
is
2 steps back, please.
1965. We're
Yeah.
gonna jump 3 years, and it's gonna get crazy.
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 Crazy. He went from man of the year
Yeah, man of the year to
going to his downfall.
convicted. There are a lot of things wrong with what happened, and I wanna discuss that with you
Mhm.
during this next little part right here. May 10th, 1968, he was arrested and charged for sodomy.
Okay.
There was a 16-year-old complainant. I didn't put the name in, but the name does appear on newspaper articles. I just didn't feel comfortable
Yeah,
putting in the name of a complainant.
especially a minor. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The 16-year-old alleged that Gacy had oral sex with him, and later that fall, he actually paid him to have sex with him. So the date of the incident was August of 67. So that's not even that many years from the
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce Man of the Year. That's 2 years.
Yeah.
So, and then the kid was probably afraid to come forward. I mean, saying, I actually took
Well,
the
yeah.
money, but he was coerced and groomed.
It doesn't matter. Well, and also it's just like,
He's a minor. It doesn't matter.
man, to go from
All that to this.
yeah, it's like, "Hey."
He didn't think he was gonna get caught. It was not there's no way it was the first time it happened.
Yeah. Well, all those
Um,
accolades, he's, like,
yeah.
on cloud 9, like,
The
"I'm
I wonder
untouchable,"
if
and
half
then
of them on there were names of guys. Like, I
right?
really wish that document could have been found
Yeah.
because that would be very, very telling, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
This goes even further, though.
Okay.
He gets arrested, he gets out on bail, but he ends up getting rearrested with the charges of attempting to get perjury, malicious threats to extort, going armed with intent, and breaking and entering. The breaking and entering was a separate
Jeez.
incident. Went to this like place and broke in, which I don't really care about because there was nobody harmed.
Who cares?
Gacy paid an 18-year-old $10 and agreed to pay off the rest of his car note if the 18-year-old would beat up the complainant in the sodomy case.
Huh. Okay.
This high schooler was this 18-year-old befriended this high schooler where they went out to a park and they were probably just going to chill, do whatever. Ultimately, he ends up getting sprayed in the face with mace. And later
Oh my
on, we
god.
find out that Gacy bought the mace and gave it to the 18-year-old to use. All charges would be dismissed except for sodomy in the plea deal.
Okay.
So when he's going in, they're seeing dismissed, dismissed, dismissed for all these other charges, but they are seeing him going in for the sodomy charge, and he was sentenced to 10 years in the penitentiary. He went to the Anamosa Men's Reformatory, which, guys, while at the reformatory, he helped create a miniature golf course for the prisoners. And he was the best inmate. Like, he did everything an inmate should do and got all these
Accolades?
accolades and things that he was not really supposed to do while
Yeah.
in there, but the guards apparently started liking him and the prisoners were fine with him, which makes no sense because most prisoners are not okay with people that do child sexual
Yeah.
assaults. So maybe they didn't know what he was in for, would be my guess.
Well, he probably said it was something
Yeah.
else. Like, you know,
I doubt they could get the paperwork as easy as
yeah,
they can
like
nowadays.
but I mean, man, putt-putt golf, huh?
Yeah. He chaired the actual project.
You can do that?
Apparently, and they have pictures of the golf course.
Do you think he's gonna add that to the list whenever he goes and tells people, like, his accolades?
I think that's gonna be on it.
Like, whenever he introduces
Yes.
himself, he's gonna be like, "Hey, and also while I was in prison,
Yeah, he'll leave that little tidbit out, but the rest.
I was a chairman on a board where we did recreational putt-putt." Oh my god.
There was a traumatic thing that happened to him while he was in prison.
Okay.
His father is gonna die on Christmas Day, and he is not while he's in prison, and he will not be allowed to go to the funeral.
I mean, I wouldn't be devastated about that. Like, his dad was
No,
a
but
piece of work.
he for some reason looked up to his dad. Like, in every interview, he says the same thing. It's
Even in adulthood, he was trying to prove himself to his dad. Like, that's
yeah.
why he has all these accolades, I'm pretty sure. You know?
His first wife divorces him.
Oh. Mm.
They leave with the children do not see him again. Very good job. I'm
Yes.
very happy that there's somebody doing what they should be doing to protect their children
Yeah.
in this set of circumstances.
She's like, "I'm done. I can't anymore." Yeah.
So he was doing so great,
Mhm.
that they decided that he didn't need to be there for 10 years,
Mhm.
that he has been rehabilitated,
Mm.
and he leaves in just 18 months.
Wow.
Now he's paroled, so he has some supervision.
Maybe they were like, "You know what? Because you just are having so much fun in prison with your games and stuff like that, it's really not doing anything for you." So,
The trial, like, why, and they stood by why they released him, because he
yeah.
did everything he was supposed to do. And this is based on my experience. A lot of sexual offenders can go through the motions and do what they need to do to get out of,
Mhm.
like, treatment centers
Yeah.
and prison and things of that nature. They aren't generally on the radar of the guards.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I'm saying that 100% my experience dealing with sexual offenders is that tends to be kind of normative. So I'm not surprised
Yeah.
that he didn't have issues.
That's interesting.
When it's structured, he knew what he wanted. I mean, what they wanted, he knew what to do.
Well, and that's the thing though that you see with him, he's always considered a hard
Mhm.
worker and able to do everything. It's whenever he's by himself and alone is whenever he starts doing stuff that is not okay. So if he's constantly on like there's no privacy in prison.
Yeah.
Like so he's going to be on his best behavior that entire time. There's nowhere for him to do anything that he impulsively wants to do,
Well,
Well, to a degree.
he'd have access, but I think he knew enough to not test other prisoners.
Yeah, like, he definitely knows how to put on his game face.
Yes, for sure.
He knows what he needs to do to get to where he wants to be. So, you see that with his adult life. It is just astonishing to me that this like, he that child becomes this adult. It's just
And he's
mind-boggling.
technically still pretty young
Yeah, he's in his
when
20s
he's
still,
doing
right?
all this. Let's see.
20s or early 30s,
Yeah.
right?
So they release him, and Iowa allows him to have supervision in Illinois.
Wait, what?
Iowa allows him to move to Illinois for his
Okay.
supervision. The
Oh,
thing
okay,
I
now I get it.
Yeah.
I was
So
like,
the
"Ugh."
parole yeah, the parole supervision.
Okay.
Just a few months after he's released, which was June of 1970, in February of 71, he is arrested and accused of rape by another teenage boy, but the
Hmm.
charges will be dropped because he fails to appear. Now, do we remember what he did the last time somebody was threatening him?
Yeah, he paid
Like, I
somebody
don't
off.
know if they didn't look into this.
Yeah.
Even even better, October of that same year, he was released from parole, no longer under supervision, and it was because Iowa and Illinois didn't talk to each other about that rape charge.
Yeah, which, I mean, you know better than I do since you were in that vocation for a bit.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Talking among all the different
Mhm.
places, there is not it's not great communication. Like, things definitely get missed.
They have a thing called interstate compact. So let's say I had a parolee or a probationer that wanted to move and live somewhere else. The
Mhm.
idea in place is that you send it over, they get accepted, have supervision, and then move. The reality of the situation is much
Yeah.
different. Most of the time, they go over there, especially if they're juveniles. They'll go over there and they're just calling in once a month. So there's not really supervision going on because nobody in the other state has accepted it.
Yeah. It's more like check-ins.
Yeah, that's really all it is.
We're checking
It's
in.
broken. It's definitely broken at the juvenile level. I'm going to assume
Yeah.
they have the same issues at every level. So he's
Yeah.
free with no supervision.
Hmm.
He is going to go ahead. He lives with his mom at this time in Chicago. He was a cook. Ultimately, though, he is going to become a contractor. So, which makes sense for him.
Okay.
I mean, with somebody that's been doing that's a hard worker and, and a contractor has to be good with people in public or you're not going to get customers.
Yeah.
So I think his vocation says a lot about his ability to, I don't know if it's manipulate people
Hmm.
or have this persona. His like outward persona is such that, everyone's going to like him. Which is scary because then people turn a blind eye. Like his neighbor, the husband of the other neighbor that I talked about, said, "Yeah, I saw him bringing young boys into his house all the time. I didn't know why." It's like, "Oh my god. Can we call somebody on that? Because he's an adult and these are young boys. We do not do that. But also, if he's a contractor
Yeah.
and you see people coming in and out, it was more common back then for a 16 or 17-year-old to work on a crew than it would be today. So I can see how it could get past you, but at the same time, I'm like, let's ask at least some
Yeah.
questions. Some questions.
Yeah. Like, hey, why isn't any of these boys coming out that go in?
Well, they were still coming, some of them.
Like,
Okay, the people he killed were only the tip of the iceberg of the intimate relationships that he had.
yeah.
At this point in time, after his supervision was over, him and his mother actually move into the house where everything's going to happen.
Okay, so he lived with his mom while all this was going down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because remember, his dad had passed away
Yeah.
so he went and lived with his mom. Now, his mom's going to move out.
Okay.
I'll tell you about the dates of that. His first murder took place in early 1972.
Okay.
And they know this from after they got the remains and they tested it. We know that this was at least the first murder that they found.
Okay.
In the summer of 72, so same year, that is when Gacy marries Carol Hoff. His mom moves into her own apartment. Carol's mother, and Carol's two daughters move in with Gacy. We're in 1972 summer.
That's a full house.
So it's a lot of people in the house. Now, his mom, he used to get mad when his mom would come over.
Hmm.
And it was because his mom would always comment on the smell in the house.
Oh, okay.
So he did not like it when he still loved his mom and all that, don't get me wrong, but yeah, he did not like when she came over.
Okay.
So he's active in the community at this time. Remember, he's already murdered at least one. He headed town committees. He joined the Moose Lodge.
Okay.
He played Pogo the Clown at different events and for children.
Yeah. Okay. I always wondered where the whole clown thing came in because I'm like, why is he a freaking clown?
Yeah. We're gonna look over one of the individuals that spoke up about Gacy, did a interview, not an interview. He was in court and he was subpoenaed, so he kind of had to talk. That gives an understanding of Pogo the Clown because he also played a clown with him
Okay.
and would go places. Yeah. From 1972 to the summer of 1977, he had killed at least 12 young men and buried them under his
Hmm.
house. That's, a large
Yeah. No,
number.
it is.
Carol and them had been living there, but they moved out in 76. For
4 years.
4 years, while that family was living there, he was doing this, which is probably why it didn't ramp up as fast as
Yeah.
later, because it'll go from the 12 to the 33 a lot quicker.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Now, Carol decided to divorce him.
Okay.
And the reason she gave is lack of intimacy. Apparently, they never had sex the entire time. And
Huh.
he was always spending late nights in the garage. He'd have angry outbursts. And she alleged that he was seeing other women, which he wasn't. But Gacy stated for him, Carol did not prepare meals and alleged that I saw other women, which she's not wrong about the second part. But
Mhm.
Yeah, they were like, no, you can have a divorce. It's fine.
It's like, yeah.
March 1978, he is actually accused of raping another person, a 26-year-old male.
Hmm.
This is settled in civil court where he agrees to pay $3,000.
Just, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, in December of that same year, 1978, that is when Gacy will finally be charged with murder. And it's because he stepped away from his original MO of finding young men and boys who didn't have necessarily a place to live,
Okay.
or they're more transient sort of individuals.
Like
And
runaway
he
or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a lot of times these families wouldn't do anything. Now we will find out later is that there are 3 different runaways in this town where the family lists him as the last person to have seen them, but they just assume they were runaways. So,
Wow.
yeah,
If you have
because
3, like, come on.
it's crazy to me that there were so many signs.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, yeah. Ultimately, there was a 15-year-old by the name of Rob Peist who went missing. The difference between him and the other victims is he had strong family ties. He attended school. He
Hmm.
actually worked at the local pharmacy, so everybody's going to know him.
Yeah.
He was a good, put together kid. He wasn't a transient. He wasn't, a druggie. He wasn't a slacker, those sorts of terms that a lot of times police will be like, oh, nah, just run away, slacker. It's nothing.
Yeah, so it's definitely a different kind.
And
Mhm.
they weren't able to arrest him on a murder charge because they didn't have evidence for
Okay.
it, but they were tracking him at this time. So they
Hmm.
were trying to figure out. He ends up selling or giving marijuana to somebody else, so they are able to get him on a delivery charge, which was enough to get the judge to sign off on a warrant to go look in the house.
Wow.
It took all that. But if you look at the dates, 77 to 78, and you originally had 12 buried before then, and then it jumps up to 33 bodies. Not all of them buried. Richard couldn't be buried because he ran out of room.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, the house is
Good
only so
lord.
big.
That house isn't still standing, right? Like, they tore it
No,
down, right?
they tore it down.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure because no.
Finally, he's going to be formally charged with murder. It's going to take a little over a year for the trial. March 12th, 1980. It took the jury all of 1 hour and 50 minutes to sentence him to death
Good.
because there is so much evidence
Yeah, there
that how he thought, I mean, he got away with it for so long, but the smell, so he would have people go in and dig trenches and get really mad if they were offline with any of the trenches and had them put like lye and stuff down.
so if you were a person who was contracted to go and do that and you saw somebody like be like, don't deviate,
Don't deviate at all.
my my
Yeah. No,
curiosity would be piqued.
definitely.
And the smell to be in the literally in the trenches when you're doing that, like, how would
The
these people
decompensation.
right? How would these people not be like, there's something amiss here.
I'm
There
sure he just
seems
makes up stuff.
there
Like,
seems to be
oh, the
something.
sewer, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, that, even though
I
dead
don't
bodies have a
know.
very specific smell, somebody knew. I don't believe that nobody knew,
I can't
personally.
think that no, but like, oh, I accidentally went over a few inches and there was a hand. Like, come
Yeah,
on. It's just and I can't see his house being that big or that part of the house being I don't know. It's weird to me. The whole thing's
it's
weird.
weird. One of the things I used to kind of understand what was happening with Gacy was the case transcript with an individual by the name of Michael Rossi.
Mhm.
So Rossi ultimately meets Gacy while at a job, which normal for him.
Yeah.
So Gacy called him in for an interview, gave him a drink. One of the first questions he said that Gacy asked Rossi was how liberal he was.
Okay.
And liberal, the only thing he meant was sexually liberal. He
Yeah.
didn't mean like any other. He just meant that. And Rossi said that he had said that he didn't want to hear or discuss the information, and the subject was dropped. I
Yeah.
find it hard to believe that he dropped the subject, but I also don't want to criminalize a victim.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to toe the line with how I feel about Rossi and what I think in my head might have actually been the reality.
Yeah.
Now, Rossi talked about Gacy throwing tons of parties. They'd have drugs, alcohol. A lot of the people there were underage.
Mm.
Rossi is going to end up moving in with Gacy.
When did this take place? Like, after they got a divorce or
Oh
from
yeah,
Okay.
it's after, because it was just them two for a
Okay.
while. By 1976, we see that he's living with Gacy. He's also working with him at a lot of different job sites.
Okay. 1976. So this is towards the end of
Yes.
before he's
Yes, this
getting
is
about to
kind
get
of
caught. Yeah.
through him, we're getting an idea of what Gacy's doing. So
Okay.
in the transcript, it actually lists like the locations of all the job sites. So you can kind of get an idea of where he was working at
Mhm.
that time and what he was doing. January to February 1977, Rossi is going to purchase a white 71 Plymouth Satellite from Gacy. The title of the previous owner is listed as John, I think it's Sick, and there was a notary that transferred to Michael Rossi and John Gacy. The problem with this is later, that's one of the victims, and there's no way he signed it over.
Mm. Well, I mean, he was known to pay people off, so I'm sure he just paid a notary.
Well, and he was grooming Rossi.
Yeah.
I mean, full on giving him a car.
Yeah.
That, yeah. The first time Rossi is going to move out of the apartment will be in April 77. There are a few times they get into a few scuffles. They don't always get along.
Mhm.
Now, he did recall in the summer of 77 that Gacy had him dig a trench in the crawl space.
Hmm.
77, so we already have 12 bodies.
Yeah.
And he would actually write, like, draw and put things out with where to do the trench. What's interesting is later on, when police ask for information about the whereabouts of those he killed, he is able to draw a picture with the orientation and everything of everybody and give it to the police and say this is where they're at.
Wow.
It
Okay.
was very meticulous. It
Mhm.
wasn't just haphazard at all.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be if you're entrusting people to go and dig the trenches for you,
Yeah.
you would have to be meticulous about where.
Rossi was like, when we were digging, a lot of the time there would be a lot more bugs than we would think would be it's disgusting in an area
You
like that.
think?
But with decomposition, yeah.
Yeah.
And he said he spread 8 to 900 pounds of lime throughout the crawl space, and it was like a half inch thick.
What, to try to alleviate some of the smell, or what was that for?
He knew it was for the musty odor, as he puts it, but he didn't know it was to cover up bodies. So when he was doing it, he did a half-inch thick lye all the way throughout the crawl space of Gacy's home.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
So Rossi and him in 1978, there was a period of time where they got into a physical fight with each other, so he stopped working again for Gacy for a little bit. So like I said, there's some animosity between these two.
yeah.
Ultimately, he'll get hired back and they'll resume their sort of, I guess, non-relationship, because Rossi says they never had a relationship of any sort,
Hmm.
which again, I find hard, but I do not want to make a victim, you know,
Yeah.
question the victim. There was a period of time where, right before Gacy is caught in December of 78, where Rossi is going to go to Gacy's residence because he was supposed to pick up some ornaments for some Christmas trees. And when he arrives, there are 4 detectives at Gacy's home to interview Gacy.
Okay.
4 detectives. So he pulls
4.
in, he sees 4 detectives. The Gacy did not open the door for 20 minutes for any of the detectives. The detectives leave. Rossi goes into his house to get the ornaments. Like, if I see 4 detectives somewhere, I'm not going into that person's house.
Yeah, and so Rossi was just sitting there for 20 minutes, like,
It looks like.
just
I
being
have a feeling he probably wasn't in his actual driveway. He might have been down the street or something.
yeah,
Nothing said,
it's
but
just kinda weird.
otherwise the cops. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if I would, especially 4 police o
yeah.
it's weird.
And they're detectives, so
Yeah.
it was obvious. Rossi went in and, said that he could go up to the attic and get the ornaments for him if need be. Gacy would not let Rossi into the attic.
Huh.
So, obviously something was there at that point in time.
Yeah.
We're not really sure what. Actually, we might be if we correlated this with the forensic work, but I did not do
Well, and he
that
didn't go in and
today.
be like, "Hey, man, like, I just noticed the police,
No,
like,
not from what his testimony
what was
is.
going is everything okay? Like, like, anything going on that I need to know about?" None of that?
No.
Okay. Just, "I want the ornaments." Alright. Interesting.
Gacy told him that there had been a death in the family around the time when this happened, and that the police were there to check on and make sure he was okay
But
because of the family
because
deaths.
that's what they have time to do, is go and check on people who have had a family member. 4. They can have 4 detectives go
Yep,
and check to make sure that you're okay because there was a death in the family, because that's what the police are for. Okay.
it's it's unbelievable that anyone would buy that.
Yeah. No.
I mean, he couldn't have been asking the questions that I would think you would ask,
Yeah.
but ugh,
It it
all right. It's nuts.
Oh, man.
By December 19th, 1978, Rossi has a conversation with Gacy finally about the fact that there are cops tailing him.
Tailing Rossi or Gacy? Or both?
Gacy.
Okay.
They did have their eyes on Rossi
Yeah.
too. They did want to see if he could give them any information.
Mhm.
On December 21st, 1978, Rossi receives a phone call from Gacy requesting him to come over to the house and pick up some magazines that he needed to get rid of. It's probably pornography. A thing he would do with a lot of these young men was watch and read pornography together.
Okay.
So I think a lot of ideas of what was, sexual came from pornography. So that could explain some of the things that we're gonna see when they take the forensics of the deaths. He goes over to the house. He was gonna also pick up any drugs that might have been in the house, and he knew that there were police there the other day. So the fact that he was going over to hide this stuff, Rossi probably didn't think two things about it. It was probably like, okay, well, it needs to be hid because they're gonna check your house for drugs. And compared to 33 dead people, drugs is not a big deal if you look at it
Yeah.
in that respect. Like porno mag
Mhm.
drugs compared to serial killer. Mm,
Well, serial killer might be more masculine.
true. Probably.
I'm joking, but, yeah, I'm just thinking about what his dad, would think of everything.
Ultimately, he told Gacy he could not get all the way to his house. So he could drop off any of the stuff that he needed to at a place called at David Cram's house, which was, I guess, an intermediate between the two locations of where Rossi was staying and where Gacy was. So by the time he went to Cram's house, Gacy already arrived. When he entered the house, Gacy was obviously emotionally disturbed, was the wording that Rossi used. He was nervous, breaking into tears, and he told both of them that he had confessed to his lawyers the night before to over 30 killings. And Rossi's like, once I heard this, I was out.
Yeah. You're like, peace.
Which there are several other times you should have been out, but that's okay.
Yeah. There's now, and that's one of those moments where he was probably like, after hearing that and like leaving, could you imagine he was probably like, all those things, that's what it was for.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
To give a little bit of insight into this Rossi Gacy dynamic, which I think is kind of important in understanding Gacy himself. Rossi was 16 when they met, so he was in that prime age category for him. One of the things that he did with Rossi was they would both go and play as clowns.
Hmm.
Rossi's clown was named Patches, and Gacy was Pogo.
Okay.
So they would go do that together. Rossi believed Gacy was a hard worker. And one of the things that you're going to see the prosecution do is they're really going to try to question some of the things that Rossi may have known or knew or did. And one of
Mhm.
the things that I don't like that they do is Rossi got a lawyer, which I think is smart for anyone involved in anything.
Yeah.
Even if you aren't the one that did anything, but to get a lawyer, that's good.
Lawyer up. Yeah. Know your rights.
The prosecutor made it seem like because he got a lawyer, he was guilty. That's what they were trying to play the jury with.
Yeah.
But he was just a witness. He was not charged from what
Okay.
I know. So if you're not charged, you how could you even be guilt? I don't know.
Huh.
Rossi did say that he knew Gacy was bisexual, but he never went with him out to the fields or the place where they would go pick up people. I find that hard to believe. He denied engaging in any sexual activities with Gacy, which I find hard to believe that Gacy would have been able to control himself, but it might have also been why they ramped up in that last year.
Yeah.
He was doing that to be able to get that urge out, and that allowed Rossi was kind of like there to be seen as, hey, he's there, he's still alive, everything's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if he went that far in his thinking, but that's kind of what I
Hmm.
thought. Now Rossi did admit that he was the one that wrote John Sykes' name on the transfer
Oh, okay.
for the car. So he's not guilty of doing anything.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he really thought he was dead, but,
Or if,
I mean,
Gacy being charismatic and everything like that was able to just
just manipulate him.
manipulate him and to an impressionable young guy, like, oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
No problem. Type thing, not really realizing what that actually meant. Cuz typically the people you hang out with you don't think are, uh serial killers.
yeah. One of the fights is very much like what he would do to a lot of others. He went after Rossi by scratching his eye and then trying to choke him,
Hmm.
which ultimately is going to lead into a real. He also does a lot of wrestling, which is going to lead into a real fight. Choking is one of the main modes that he used.
Strangulation for like
Yep.
killing his victims. Oh, okay.
Yep. Because I think that just showed strength in his mind.
Yeah.
Gacy actually told Rossi that not only did he have a heart condition, he also had leukemia and poor health. He didn't have leukemia.
And I'm still weary of if he had a heart condition. Like,
I'm weary about all of it, but yeah, he didn't. No.
yeah, I don't know.
So my thing is Gacy spent a ton of time grooming Rossi.
Mhm.
Could this have been a platonic relationship
I don't know. Like,
with a guy like Gacy? I don't know.
yeah, and I don't think we're ever going to know either.
No.
But like, I would like to think that it was, and Rossi was just maybe just very innocent in his way of thinking of people. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Very impressionable. Because I mean, he was very young whenever they met.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and definitely I could see it would be hard for me to understand Gacy not taking advantage of him, but we do see that he does because he forged the signature. He was able to get Rossi to do that. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
weird.
it's just when I read it, it was just
It's
like,
a weird relationship.
I don't know what to
And
think
then
of
what was
this.
the age gap? So he was 16, and how old was Gacy at that point whenever he met Rossi?
He was born in 42. He would have been 34.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
And that's a huge gap. If you're a teenager, you're not friends with a 30-year-old. It's weird.
And I'm wondering if he saw him less as a friend and more as a mentor?
Possibly, because, I mean, it was a job that he was going for, right? So, very well could've.
Yeah, and then he lived there just because he needed a place to stay.
Yeah. Well, and you have this, like, older guy who seems like he has all the things, like, all the accolades, very well
Mhm.
standing.
Except seeing police officers at the door, that would lead me to question what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would now for sure, but, like, also this was at a different time too. So
Yeah,
who knows? And there are some people where they just say things and you're like, "Oh yeah, I believe you."
yeah,
You know? Which is just that charismatic aspect of them that just kind of draws you in. And so it's weird to think that that was Gacy
yeah.
cuz again, getting to see what he became from like what he was as a child and what he went through is flabbergasting.
It seems like in this the generational trauma, the untreated
Mhm.
PTSD, and how I mean, people do grow up in that and don't become serial killers, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
It's almost like it kinda created this perfect storm.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the vast majority of children who endure abuse do not become serial killers.
Correct.
Very few and far between. And some serial killers aren't necessarily derived from an abusive background, which is another crazy thing. But it's just in this particular instance, his just horrible upbringing.
And you can tell it's about
Mhm.
proving power because if you're doing strangulation, he did a lot of bondage before torture, bondage, and he would
Mhm.
drug a lot of them. But strangulation tended to be the ultimate tool that he used to kill people. And the only way you're going to do that is if you exert power
Mhm.
over somebody else, generally with
Yeah.
the intent to kill.
Yeah, for sure. Ugh.
So that's Gacy.
That is Gacy. What year was he actually put to
It
death?
was 94.
Oh, that really wasn't that long ago.
No, he went through a bunch of appeals where he made ridiculous arguments as to why his appeals should be upheld, but he wasn't gonna no, it wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah, wasn't gonna
There
happen.
was too much evidence,
Yeah. Was he just trying to go back to the insanity?
partially, but other things he'd say he wanted thrown out because of this, that, or the other, and, it's just no. Nope.
It's like, dude, even if no, like 33.
Yeah.
No.
Even in the first case, he's in his, like, later 20s, but he starts with sexual deviance with that sodomy case, which I doubt was the first time,
Yeah.
but what they saw in that case is that the 16-year-old reported that he had his hands bound behind his back and that he was almost choked to death.
Yeah, so you start seeing what he was gonna do later.
Yes. So the
Mhm.
behaviors definitely you can see them starting in one location and then just being escalating over time, getting to the
Mhm.
point where he's actually killing these individuals.
Yeah.
So be a good parent. Don't be
Yeah.
a dick to your kids.
Yeah. Let's not do that. And also, if somebody says that you think that if a professional believes that your child needs some psychiatric treatment because they
Get
see
it.
things, go ahead and get it. If you don't believe that doctor, get a second and third opinion before just pulling and deciding not to do anything.
Yes.
You know,
Now, not that
saying,
may have changed nothing, but we don't know.
yeah,
We'll never know. It would be great to not even have this as a podcast because that treatment made a Gacy that didn't kill
mhm.
33 young men and boys and saved
Yeah,
the
and
lives, but
we also don't know if all of the brain injuries and stuff like that played a role in this as well.
yeah, if he actually was passing out, I could see, like, when I pass out, I try to make sure I get low because I have a thing that causes me to pass out every now and then. It's fine. But
It's
I
your
try to make
parlor trick.
sure yes, my parlor trick. I make sure I try to be as low as possible with nothing around. If you're a kid and you don't know what's going on and you just pass out, the
Mhm,
number of times he probably hit his head at
mhm.
that point too. Oh my god.
Well as, like, his dad hitting him. Who's to say
Yes.
his dad didn't hit him in the head and stuff too?
Yeah,
Like,
I find it
I don't
hard to
know if
believe.
yeah, like, concussions, things of that nature, like, there's so many different variables that could attribute to what he became.
Most reports just discuss the razor strap that he would use on his kids. There weren't any reports that I saw, but it is hard to believe that when he was that
Yeah.
drunk, he never escalated.
Well, and the seizures,
Yes.
the, blood clot in his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, all of those things, all of them. Well, and I mean, we also do see that, him throwing parties, he did have drugs, he did have, like,
Yes.
alcohol and stuff too, so I don't know how much he used and everything like that as an adult,
I
but
mean, he didn't have any problem using chloroform on his victims, so
yeah. So,
yeah. He got
yeah.
his hands on stuff he shouldn't have had his hands on to begin with, but
Yeah,
yeah.
true.
For me, I'm gonna say this does indicate what untreated PTSD and generational trauma, how it could impact another person's lives, but it doesn't give the adult Gacy an okay to do any of those things.
No, not at all.
Yep.
Mhm.
It,
Alright, so what's next for us, Nicole?
we are going to be looking into a female serial killer,
Hmm,
and her name, she's known as Lydia Sherman, but
okay.
her original surname was Danbury. She's known as the lady who poisoned a lot of her husbands and children.
Oof.
It's going to be pretty interesting. I did start a little bit of trying to get her background. It's not going to be easy, but the plus is a lot of the information is from Connecticut, so I can probably find it.
Yep.
It's a local. It's a local.
It's a local
For
for
me,
well,
yeah.
for you, it's a
Yeah,
local.
we'll do your local next, but
Yeah.
this is my local that I wanted to
Yep.
go ahead and do. Ultimately, they believe she poisoned upwards of 9 people.
Ugh,
It's arsenic.
sounds like it will be a doozy.
Yep,
Yeah, and a lot of female serial killers go that route,
yep,
and it's just like,
poison.
interesting.
Alright, remember, be human.
Be human.